Our guest today is quite simply a legend of the mandolin. I've heard him in a few different configurations over the years, and he has a show coming up in my home city of New Westminster at the Anvil Theatre. It's a Sunday afternoon show on December 7th. So please welcome Mr. John Reischman.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to talk to you for the first time now. I'm excited to know that you're playing in New West. Are you connected to New West? I feel like I have seen you come up with this before.
Well, I live in New West, so yes, I am. And
Very good.
I played the Anvil once before, I think pre-COVID, as part of a presentation that featured established musicians with us and younger musicians they've mentored a bit. So that was I enjoyed it quite a bit, and happy to be headed back.
Yeah, I miss it often. I live out here in Coquitlam now, but I grew up in New West, and so I always think of it fondly.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, we moved here about 13 years ago and lived in East Van for many years and ended up moving out. And I was not super aware of it. Like, came out here a couple times to go to the movies, and really happy to be here. It's where we live, right near Queen's Park. So it's a great neighborhood.
My most recent music release, I play bass, is called Queen's Park.
Oh, nice. Well, good.
But that is absolutely the last of my own stuff that I will mention, because you have many more albums than we could possibly explore in detail. And that's just talking about your output as a leader, not to mention other appearances you did. Your discography is vast, and I have some highlights that come to mind for me about it, but hopefully we can touch on a few different periods of time,
Yes.
I think we could maybe get back to a period of time that happened quite a while ago by first talking about your instrument a bit, your mandolin, because I saw a video, I think it was a CBC video, where you talked about how you got it in the 80s, this mandolin, and you were encouraged by Tony Rice and David Grisman to get this instrument?
Yeah, well, yes, definitely. I was playing in Tony Rice's band in the early 80s, and that's this mandolin I have. It's an old Gibson from the 20s. It's F5 model, and this one came up for sale where I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's a music store in Oakland, and I heard through the grapevine they had one for sale. They kind of, it surfaced from someone's garage, I think, and the family who owned it sold it to the music store, and the music store had to hold on to it before they could actually sell it to make sure it wasn't stolen. They have to do a police check. So during that time, I went over and checked it out, and I called Tony right away afterwards, and I said, "Man, I just played this mandolin, this Lloyd Loar mandolin," which is the name of the guy who signed the inside. And he says, "Oh yeah, you got to get it." So I got his permission, I guess. But no, it's something I had always dreamt about getting, and he definitely encouraged me to. And David Grisman had lived in the same area, and he had been to see it too. And they said, well, this other guy, this young guy, referring to me, John Reischman, has checked it out, and he knew me from because he and Tony had played together. So he thought, well, I'll just if John can get it together to purchase it, because it was a pretty high ticket item at the time for a young struggling musician. If he can get it together, I'll just step back, and if he can't, I'll swoop in. And luckily, I was able to get the funds together. And I always say this jokingly, I haven't looked at another mandolin since, but that's not really true. But I'm feel super fortunate to be able to play this whenever I want.
That's wonderful to have an instrument that gets imbued with so much meaning, not only like right away in the story of how it came into your life, but of course in the decades since. Yeah.
It's just been a fantastic instrument.
So I am a fan of the Tony Rice unit for sure. There is one tune in particular that, with a friend of mine, I used to try and play on a couple of our little gigs when we were growing up, and that tune would have been Manzanita. Also Ginseng Sullivan. Those are both from the same record. I think it might be the first record, in fact. But I would love to check with you For my listening pleasure, when I go back and listen to Tony Rice Unit records, all the ones that you appeared on, I have a couple that I could identify like through Discogs easily just by your name popping up. I thought I'd ask you about that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that album that Manzanita and Ginseng Sullivan are from, that's my favorite Tony Rice record. I'm not on it, but it's really more of a bluegrass recording, except it's bluegrass without banjo, because the banjo player he wanted to use, J.D. Crowe, couldn't make it. So he just said, well, I'll just make it without a banjo. And he had been used to playing without a banjo, playing with the David Grisman Quintet. But it's interesting. Manzanita, that's a tricky tune. And I just did a tour in California with some old friends, and that was in the repertoire. So every night we did our best to do it justice. And then Ginseng Sullivan, that's written by the great Norman Blake. He's, one of my favorite musicians of all time. But I had to play that a few times. That's a little tricky too. But the albums I played on with Tony, the first one was released as an LP and was called Still Inside. And then it was re-released as part of a collection compact disc called Devlin. And then the next one was a year later. This was 82, I guess. It's called Backwaters. And Tony always cites that as his favorite of his own recordings, which I feel, very, very honored that he feels that way about something that I was the mandolin player on.
It's so cool that when you look back at it now, is a condensed period of not that many years, you were playing in that band with him alongside Sam Bush and David Grisman and more people.
Yeah, Sam Bush and David Grisman were my idols, really. Those two, plus maybe Jethro Burns. And I couldn't believe I was, stepping into those shoes. And the Manzanita, I think, was recorded in 79, and then I recorded in 81 and 82. So that is really a short amount of time.
I have a feeling that around these years, you were about the age I am now. You were an American living in California where you had grown up. And so it's cool for me to hear from you about this time.
Yeah. I guess I joined in 80 and I was 25. Maybe I was 24. Yeah. And then turned 25. Yeah. So I was pretty young and really hadn't been playing that long, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Did you mentioned that Bush and Grisman were already your idols, and then they also became your contemporaries. Did you have particular mentors or teachers that you also wanted to mention as being important to you already at this time in your mid-20s?
No, not really. I was self-taught on the instrument. I took some guitar lessons, when I was a teenager. But as far as mandolin went, I just listened to the recordings and figured out fiddle tunes and slowed the recordings down and learned people's solos like Sam Bush and David Grisman. And I was inspired by recorded musicians, I guess, primarily. And in 1978, I moved to the Bay Area to join a bluegrass band called the Good Old Persons. And that was really a great move because that band, while they had a healthy respect for traditional music, there were also really good songwriters. Like Kathy Kallick is just a brilliant songwriter. And so there was this new material that I didn't have to listen to the original recording like you would a Bill Monroe record or Flat and Scruggs. It was like wide open for me to figure out what I might play on the mandolin just on my own. And also Paul Solaski was a great tune and songwriter. He was a fiddle player in that band. So, and that's how Tony ended up meeting me, as he stopped by this bluegrass bar in San Francisco where we were playing. And I guess he took note. And when he decided he wanted to put a band together, he gave me a call, and it's super encouraging.
Did you then tour a bunch in these next years of your life in this period with him and with other people, or were you mostly local to the Bay Area?
It was more playing in the Bay Area, although we did one national tour with Tony where we went from, I guess, Salt Lake to Texas to North Carolina to New York to New England. But it was mostly, up and down the West Coast.
I associate a lot of these musicians that you're naming. I guess I'm also thinking of Daryl Anger, who we haven't mentioned before. Like, I have a friend who's a violinist who's my age, who I
Yes.
started a band with, and he studied with Daryl at
Oh,
Berkeley. And I just thought of that because you mentioned New England, and it's like you went
yeah.
there. And I guess
Yes.
a lot of this music ended up there.
Yeah. Daryl's old friend, is part of that Bay Area scene, not only for bluegrass, but the new acoustic music from the David Grisman Quintet, and ended up being in the Tony Rice unit. But Daryl and I still stay in touch, and we played together in recent years.
Did you ever think about moving, living, or being based on the East Coast?
A little bit, but not for very long.
Yeah. Because you came to Vancouver, maybe 10 years after this kind of period of time.
Yeah. That's pretty accurate. Yes. That was because I met the woman I ended up marrying. And so it's been a great move. And I had toured in Vancouver over the years. And so if musicians here knew who I was. So I was, kind of got work right away. And I love the West Coast. It's like, I guess at one time I thought about maybe I should move to Nashville. I was a little, freer, but I think I'm happy I've stayed on the West Coast and still go to California all the time too, and have connections there from growing up there.
We're happy to have you here. Can I ask you some Vancouver things? I'm fascinated by this.
Sure.
So I'm from here, born and raised in the area, from New West, right? I was born in 1995. So I would love to hear about, your first times to Vancouver and like the first time you got to know Vancouver and what it was like, because it was just before anything I would have seen.
Oh, yeah. It was really interesting. The band I mentioned, the Good Old Persons, we did a tour that we went from, I guess, San Francisco to maybe Eugene, Oregon, and Portland, Oregon, then Seattle. And I hadn't spent time in those places much at all. And so that was exciting. And then we cross the border and there's this huge cosmopolitan city I was not really aware of. It's like, it was just, beyond, what I had considered. I just thought, oh, this is great. And there was this community of bluegrass musicians. The Pacific, at the time it was called the Pacific Bluegrass and Heritage Society. That organization still exists as the Pacific Bluegrass and Old Time Society, I guess. And there were all these people who were excited to have us here because we had put out a record and they were familiar with that. And maybe had Indian food for the first time, which was very exciting. And it was just, a beautiful place. And we ended up getting hired for the Vancouver Folk Festival, which was really pretty mind-blowing at the time, because there's great world music stuff that was very inspiring to me. And then came back the next year and the next year and the next year. And so, yeah, I never thought I'd move here, but I ended up here and it's been great.
That's very cool. Yeah, because the Folk Fest was founded in, I think, 1978. So yeah, not long after.
That sounds right. Yeah, but it was really great. I mean, we were super excited I think we were hired from that first trip, which is in March, I think, of '83, and then we played that summer at the Folk Fest, and then just made annual trips here. And I met my wife Gwendolyn on one of those later trips, and we just met and had nice conversation, and then that was it. And then we got reacquainted at a bluegrass convention in Kentucky where she was there and I was there, and we had more conversations and started talking on the phone, and just one thing led to another.
That's sweet. For me, so a new point on the timeline is what I believe is your first solo record under your name, North of the Border,
Yes.
1993.
Right.
Yeah, so you've moved to Vancouver right around this time.
Yeah, that's right. I moved, I guess, the end of '92. So, and the record had been completed in '91, but it was stuck in limbo because the label, through series of events, the owners had to shut down the label, but they were offering the catalog to these other labels like Rounder Records or Sugar Hill or whatever, and Rounder ended up buying the master, so it ultimately came out on Rounder Records. But I had recorded it for Kaleidoscope Records, which was a great West Coast independent that put out the first Grisman Quintet record and some Bob Wills reissues, and Kate Wolf, great singer-songwriter from California, was on that label as well. I think Darrell Anger's first solo record was on that label.
Then in your discography, what happens next? Because I know there's Up in the Woods, and that might be the late 90s. So I'm wondering what else happened in the 90s.
Well, so I moved here, and I still played music with folks in California. I'd go back there to tour, but I was, getting to know folks locally. One of the earliest groups I played with, not as an official member, but kind of as an add-on, was a group called Gypsylero, that was led by a guy named Ron Thompson, who was a really good guitar player. And he was a jazz guitarist, but he also liked acoustic music. So he had an acoustic guitar, and it was kind of somewhat Django inspired, but other stuff as well. So I'd play with that band a fair bit. And then the local bluegrass scene, there were some, just regional bands that I had with some local musicians, a band called Kootenai Loop, and just different things would come up, but nothing super seriously. And then I guess at some point I started writing tunes again. I'd kind of dropped off in the tune writing and ended up with this body of work and wanted to put out a solo bluegrass record of all originals, and that was what became Up in the Woods.
Nice. And then the first Jaybirds album is not long after that, the self-titled record. What leads to the founding of the Jaybirds? Well,
I wanted to do some shows to promote that music from Up in the Woods, and I chose some musicians that I had met while living in Canada, and friends from Washington State, like Nick Hornbuckle, the banjo player who we still play. He was on Up in the Woods. I'd met him at a music camp, and we really hit it off musically. So he played on Up in the Woods. And he was living in Seattle, so it wasn't that far away to have a band member there. And then I had met Trisha Gagnon through a band she had with her sister called Tumbleweed, which is a popular BC-based bluegrass band. And I forget, let's see, and Greg Spatz on fiddle was someone I knew from California, and he was living in Spokane. So it's interesting, like 4 of the 5 original Jaybirds are still in the band. There's just been one personnel change, and that was with Patrick Sauber joining a few years ago.
So which record, just to make sure I know, because I know he is on that other Green Shore.
Yes.
He might have been on the Christmas record. I didn't get a chance to check that out, but which was the first record that made the change?
Yeah, he had just joined when we were slowly releasing on that other Green Shore. So he plays guitar on one instrumental that I wrote called Daylighting the Creek, and then he sings harmony a little bit. So that was a transitional, and it's been a while, but we actually have a brand new CD coming out just in the next couple of weeks, and it's called the Salish Sea, and that features Patrick on all the tracks, and it was recorded here in Vancouver at Afterlife Studios. And what we would do is at the end of a tour, tag on a day or two to go in the studio and record these. And it was really good experience. That's a wonderful studio. John Ram is the engineer, and he does a fantastic job. So excited for it to finally come out.
I look forward to hearing that. And yeah, you could definitely consider your upcoming show in New West in tandem with that, because that is, of course, John Reischman and the Jaybirds show.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we'll be doing all the material, most of the material off the new recording.
That's really cool. Yeah, okay, I can picture the timeline very well now. I have friends now whom I've been so fortunate to have been playing with for maybe just over 15 years now. So like kind of going back to my very earliest days, playing music in high school or something. And I have actually known them and played with them continuously for 15 years. So I have to ask you, down the line, what does it feel like to have people that you've been playing with for like 25 years?
Well, I mean, there's a reason that most of the same band members are in, because, we have a similar musical sensibility, rhythmic feel, and a closeness. We're really a family. People are, it's not just, employees. It's just a really close-knit band. And when Patrick joined about 8 years ago, he just fit right in. That's partly why I asked him to join, is because he was such a good fit, both musically and personally. So it feels good.
So this upcoming Jaybirds record, it will be the 8th Jaybirds record? Yeah,
that's right.
Wow. Yeah, that's more than you have solo albums. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. That's true. Well, there's, with the solo album, it's all, focused on one person. Then with the Jaybirds, it's the whole band is featured. It's, it's called John Reischman and the Jaybirds, but it's not, the presentation isn't me and a backup band. Everyone's featured. And I just mentioned this to someone else, that I started the band so I could be in a bluegrass band. It's not like I wanted to just have it be about me, but be, featured on some things, and then let someone else step up and be featured. And that's kind of, I guess you've checked out the recordings. That's kind of the presentation. Like, I'll have a couple instrumentals, but there's plenty of vocals and tunes from Greg and Nick as well. So that's the way it's worked and still works.
Yeah. I have one more thing in common, I suppose, with many other admirers of your music, which is that I have played Salt Spring, your tune, that is track 1 on the first Jaybirds record, and that you've recorded subsequently. And I have played it once. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Well, that tune has really taken off with the, people who play this string band or, bluegrass adjacent music. I'm not sure why. I think because it ends on the 5 chord, so people don't know how to stop the tune, so they just keep playing it and people hear it more. I'm very honored. I've started getting videos of people playing it all over the world. This is a jam session in Catalonia, or here it is. Actually, I just saw one. It comes up often on Instagram. Well, people will record it and tag me. And there was a jam session in Thailand where they were playing it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you. Well, I've told this story before, but it's pretty funny. Where a friend, Patrick McGonigal, he's a really great fiddle player based in BC. He was on tour in England, and he had a day off, and so he went to a Celtic session, and he's playing along, and they said, "Oh, you're American," which was funny because he's Canadian. But anyway, they said, "You're American. Let's play Salt Spring." And so they played the tune, and at the end, Patrick says, good old John Reischman." And they said, "What?" And they said, "John Reischman. He wrote the tune." And they said, "Oh, well, when did he live?" Like I was, which is, as a tune writer, that's quite a high honor to be mistaken for someone who's no longer living, I guess. It was funny.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's a valid question, and it's so funny. I mean, it speaks to the reputation of the tune, because you get to observe the spreading of the tune in a way that the people who wrote the tunes that you and your friends came up learning didn't, by and large. Some of them, yes.
No,
but
they just didn't. Yeah, I guess it's just accepted as a traditional tune in some places. They don't know who I am, but that's pretty good. I'm just waiting for someone like Billy Strings to record it, so I can see some royalties.
Yeah, absolutely. And that day might come, if it's not literally him, I could see it easily happening. Somebody quite large. Something you did.
That would be good.
That would be good. So over the next, I guess, over the middle period that we kind of jumped through where we went from like early Jaybirds to like now, basically, we started talking. I
Yep.
wanted to ask you about a couple of things to see if or when you might start doing them. Like I noticed you sell transcription books of some of
Yes.
your music. I imagine you've probably done some teaching and educational pursuits over the years. So when did you start doing that?
I guess in the mid '80s, I was first asked to teach at a music camp called the Puget Sound Guitar Workshop, and at that time, I hadn't really taught anyone, and I'm self-taught myself, so I didn't have a template to draw upon. So I felt pretty out of my depth for that. But then just kept teaching privately, and then teaching more workshops, and just sort of sorted out what I thought was important to communicate to musicians, budding mandolin players, and so now that's a big part of my my year is teaching at these various camps, from Nimble Fingers here in BC, which happens in Sorrento, British Columbia, and then there's one on the East Coast called the Swannanoa Gathering in North Carolina, and several in California. So yeah, and then the books came about because people were learning these tunes from up in the woods. I like this preceded Salt Springs popularity, but they just started learning my tunes. So I thought, and I'd seen other recordings being transcribed by other musicians. So I thought, well, that's probably a good idea. So hired a really talented young guy named David Benedict to do the transcribing. And a good friend named Don Greaser laid it out, put it all together. And yeah, they keep selling. And then thought the new recording, or the most recent solo recording, New Time and Old Acoustic, that would be a good one because Salt Springs on it. So that helps.
Yeah. And then now that it's been several decades spending so much time in Canada, was there a period of time, or maybe not, where you started to go across Canada a bit more? Has it really been a story of like being local to the West Coast and local to Vancouver?
Well, it's been primarily British Columbia and Alberta, but I've definitely played in Saskatchewan a little bit. Not so much in Ontario for some reason. It just hasn't. We were nominated for a Juno Award early on, and booked a couple of gigs for that. Recently, we've gone to the Maritimes and been there once before, and that was great. So, but mostly it's been Western Canada, I'd say, and for that matter, the Western United States, just because travel is expensive. The farther you go, the more expensive it is.
I've been trying to think of a less awkward way to kind of ask you about a broader thing, and I still don't really have one. But I guess what I want to get at is like, how American and how Canadian do you feel after all these years? Like, how do you balance that feeling?
Well, I feel let's see. I guess I I grew up in California, which is West Coast, so it's it's a referred to as a blue state, and I definitely identify with that. And the whole West Coast has a similar feel to me, so I don't really distinguish too much between it. Like California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia have a lot more in common than, say, California and Florida, for example. So I see it as a regional thing, and I always like the idea of the concept of Cascadia, which would be like a breakaway republic that would include part of Canada and part of Western United States.
That's right. There's even a flag for this concept.
Is there? I haven't seen the flag, but
check it out.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, there is a flag.
So that's I feel like I represent Cascadia.
That's a cool way to put it. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Have you ever played on Galliano Island?
I've been on Galliano Island, but I don't think I played there.
I just thought of that all of a sudden because there's a store on Galliano called Manzanitaville.
Oh yeah. Well, I played on a lot of the Gulf Islands, but I've been to Galliano, but not yet. Have
you played Salt Spring on Salt Spring? You must have.
Yeah. I think it should be easier for me to get a gig on Salt Spring Island since I wrote that tune, but so far it hasn't worked that way. But I've definitely played there a lot over the years, and that's where I was when I wrote the tune. So that
makes sense.
Yeah, it was easy to name. And Pender Island, Gabriola, Denman, Quadra. What's the one? Saturna. So
You've played on Saturna. I don't think of things. Yeah. Think of it as such an unknown place to me. Yeah.
Yeah, they at least had a community concert organization, and you play these showcases, and they decide, oh yeah, let's get them. So it's been a while, but yeah.
Are there more dates around this upcoming Jaybirds record that are known to you at this point?
The show at the Anvil Center in New Westminster is part of a tour we do annually at the first week of December. And so we're playing it in Bellingham on the 3rd at the New Prospect Theater, and then Campbell River on the 4th, and then Fanny Bay on Vancouver Island on the 5th. And then this annual benefit we do in Victoria at Cordova Bay United Church. And that's been a nice annual event we've done. And then happy to have the final gig of the year here at the Anvil Center.
Yes, indeed. There's one other random time, which is actually the most recent time I've heard you play, that I'll bring up, which is String Band Tuesdays at the Heatley. I went in September. I believe it was the first one back from the summer, and you were on it. So when did you start doing that?
Well, I guess it's been a few years. Like I got an email from Mark Kiliansky, who kind of runs it and organizes who's going to be there. And I was sort of aware of him. There was a COVID recording done in Ontario called Adeline, I think it was called, with some friends of mine, and that's where I knew Mark's name. And he reached out, and Trent Freeman, who I've played a lot of music with, is often a part of that. So I just thought, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. And then the full band, I guess, would be Mark, Trent, Patrick McGonigal, Alison DeGroot, and Joseph Lubinsky Moss, and then me. And I pitched that group to the Vancouver Folk Festival a few years ago. Maybe that was 23, something like that. And that was fun because we did a workshop with Molly Tuttle's band, who I've known since she was a little kid in California. She grew up there, and I'd see her at the same music camp every year. So she's been great to see her take off.
This is another tune that I played with my same friend who I used to play Manzanita with, was Molly Tuttle's version of White Freightliner Blues.
Oh yeah. That's a good one. I've played that. I played that with Molly once or twice.
And then, of course, I'm pretty sure both Trent and Molly play on what is, until this Jaybird record comes out, your most recent release, which is one of your solo albums, New Time and Old Acoustic.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was an idea I had to, record some of these tunes that had been established, like Salt Spring, with some of these younger musicians who maybe weren't even alive when I wrote the tune. So that concept didn't go much past the tune Salt Spring, but I was happy that Molly was available for that. And also a young guy named Alex Hargraves, a fantastic fiddle player who currently tours with Billy Strings. Yeah,
you had a large cast of great musicians join you on that record.
Yeah, it was a little too large, but it was great. And Trent Freeman, I got to say, he's one of my favorite musicians, and I'm happy he lives here in Vancouver. Although he's not always here in Vancouver, but still, he's great player. Yeah,
absolutely. I would encourage people to listen to New Time and Old Acoustic now, and listen to the new album very, very soon. So
yeah, the new album is called The Salish Sea, and should be out December 5th, if all goes well.
Nice. Is there anything else that is on your mind or coming up that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, just I think this tour coming up and the new record, and looking forward to next year. Have some good tours coming up, and some in BC, some in Alberta, some in the United States.
That's awesome. I look forward to when next I hear you. It's been an honor to talk to you about many different times.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, it's great chat. Thank you.